Hello there, writerly friend. Welcome back to Max's Writer's Life Writing Advice Q&A. I'm your host, I'm Kirin. In tonight's episode, I've got a selection of randomly selected writing questions sent by viewers like you. As always, if you have a writing question you want to send my way, leave it in the comments down below or tweet it at me at Mr. Kirin. Questions are selected randomly through random.org, so your question is as likely to be picked up as anyone else's. I think that's fair. Now, before I move on anywhere with the following questions, allow me to give you the formal disclaimer as always, and remind you that the following is merely just my advice, my opinion, and what works for me. Don't take it as gospel, instead take it as the ramblings of a silly person who looks a little bit, or rather precisely like this. I really love this shirt. And I just realized that I didn't have my questions up. Such professional, much legitimacy. Hashtag wow. Anyhow, let's take it from the top. The first question goes a little bit like this. What would you think of writing a Dungeons and Dragons, or just role-playing in general, campaign as a novel? I get worried that people will shoot me down since I technically didn't write it, and the characters technically weren't my own creation for the most part. If you could voice an opinion, it would be greatly appreciated. I assume you would do the right thing and not actually use D&D properties, right? Because you can't. There are a bunch of monsters that are actually copyrighted, trademarked by Wizards of the Coast / Mattel, who actually owns D&D, so you would want to be careful about that. I'm just throwing this out there. Now, let's take it from the top. I have a really quick answer for all of this. You know, the idea that people will shoot you down because you didn't make the story or because you didn't make the characters. And I'm saying this because I want you to succeed. I'm saying this because I want you to write this book and to make it the best it could possibly be. Nobody cares. No, like, seriously, unless you put it in the back of the book that, hey, inspired by a real role-playing campaign, even then, nobody's going to care. I'm going to tell you a little secret, and I don't know if you already knew this, you know, because I assume you play role-playing games. I love role-playing games myself. And do you have any idea how many of those original Unforgotten Realms and Dragonlance books were actually, like, people's D&D campaigns? The answer is many, a lot of those, and even more than those, a lot of packaged campaigns. A lot of those packaged campaigns are actually people's games, especially the really old ones. Once again, nobody cares, because unless you tell them, they won't know, and even then, most people don't actually care. Here's my dealio. For doing a story like this, it may seem to people, and I'm not saying this is what you're thinking, but I have to give you the reality check right now. It's still going to be a lot of work. Just because you already have ideas for what should happen, or could maybe possibly happen, it doesn't mean that it will transpire the instant that you actually put it to paper. Also, there's like a mega fallacy in the idea that because you didn't come up with it, it's not yours. Here's the dealio. You're still going to write the thing. You're still going to do the biggest piece of work ever, which is writing it, which takes the longest time to do and the most effort, and by the time you're done writing it, it's going to be written in your voice, with your way of telling stories, with your way of creating a narrative. It's your story. And I can assure you right now, because I know this from personal experience, that once these characters start playing games up here, the story will go its own way. There's going to come a point in which the events that happened in the RP campaign are not going to happen anymore because characters are going to change. And that's the way writing happens. Writing is the act of discovery, once again. And I added an extra minute to the timer so I wouldn't ramble, so I'm going to summarize my thoughts really quickly. I think you can do it. I think there's nothing wrong with it. You're still going to have to put in the time, and honestly, unless you tell me at the opening of the first chapter, hey, this book is based on an RP campaign, why would you even tell me? But even then, I don't think people would even care. Seriously, a lot of those, like, Unforgotten Realms books were like people's campaigns. And now for the second question of the day, it goes a little bit like this. I constantly have issues with my confidence. I start writing something I'm excited to write, and an idea I really want to get out into the world, but after I write for about 3 hours straight, I stop and think that I am not good enough to write the story in my mind, and that really upsets me because I feel like I never get things done. I feel like a failure. How do I get over this? How do I build my confidence? So the first thing that I like to tell people is this. Are you holding yourself up to unrealistic expectations? Such as For instance, are you comparing your work right now to the work of the people you look up to the work of people who inspired you? Do you look at your writing, let's say in the middle of writing, you go back and reread passages and you tell yourself, wow, this is not good at all. Why should I even bother? To which I have to give you a reality check and something that people seem to forget every once in a while, and that is that every book you have ever read, every single one, there are no exceptions to this. Every book you have read, every book that has inspired you, that made you want to be a writer, was once a shitty, crappy first draft. There are no exceptions to this. There are no exceptions to this. Every book looks terrible when you start off. Every book looks awful when you start off. Seriously. And the reason why nobody has the balls to show them is because everyone's looks terrible. But ultimately, it's not about what you write from the start. There are gonna be misspellings, there are gonna be mistakes, there are things you can't see because the writing is so close. The first draft is just the act of gathering clay, getting the story out of here and into a physical realm or a digital realm in regards to a word processor. And then it is through revision that we cut away all the things that don't need to be there, we refine the things that do need to be there, and we exemplify the things that resonate the loudest in the story. Some people like to call those theme. Revision is a really important part of the process, and I feel that a lot of people don't make it there because they look at their crappy first draft and go, this is as good as I'm ever going to be. I'm never going to be as good as this writer. Except that that writer wrote terrible first drafts and still writes them because every first draft is bad. It may seem as though I'm really passionate about this subject, and I am, but I want you to realize something, okay? And I want you to acknowledge it, internalize it. Everyone's first draft is not good. It is through revision that we make things good. We polish them up, and through the act of alchemy, we turn this shitty first draft into gold. That's how it works for everyone. Especially that favorite writer that you have, especially that person that you look up to, their first drafts are crap. That never changes. Because it's not about skill, it's not about talent, whatever that means. It's simply about the fact that you are this close to the story that you cannot see details. It's as simple as that. You're so close to the story, you can't see the details. And I know that I haven't truly tackled your question. That is because I'm getting around that to just right about now. People assume, do you think, look me in the eyes and tell me, do you think your favorite writer is confident about their writing? Do you think that they wake up in the mornings and say, I'm good, let's do, oh man, these 5,000 words that I wrote in 10 minutes are all equally golden. Oh man, I can already smell Pulitzer? Is that for fiction? Let's pretend it's for fiction. But that doesn't happen. That's not a real thing that happens because every writer is super hypercritical of themselves. And I guess the thing that helped me the most to understand, to develop my own confidence, and by that, really, I mean to understand that I don't need to be perfect. It's not about thinking that I'm awesome. It's about thinking that I don't need to be perfect. I don't need to be as good as finished products that have been looked at by dozens of eyes and a professional editor. What helped me the most was to understand that me right now, I am in the exact same spot as my favorite writers. Your favorite writers have more years on you. That's it. But when they sit down, they feel the same worries and they feel the same fear that you have. One of my favorite quotes of all time is by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, a really famous Colombian writer. Let's go with Colombian. I think he's Colombian. And he said that every time, and this is like him in like his 80s, after writing, tons of basically like the best Colombian fiction books of all time. He said that every time he sat down to write, he was terrified. That fear can be lessened, but it doesn't really ever go away. You're always gonna think that you're not as good as you should be. And ultimately, as I've said in previous videos, developing the confidence to write, developing the ability to sit down and get things done, boils down a lot to disabling those barriers and just getting down to the act of writing. Why? Because those stories that you're writing, the only person who can ever write those, the only person who will ever give them light, are you. You and nobody else but you. And with that really dramatic response out of the way, I sure hope Max from the future picks a really good song to go with all this dramatic nature. I think I thought of doing like a Smash Brothers song in the background for this episode. Anyhow, the final question of today's video goes a little bit like this. It's a really general question, but I wanted to tackle it once and for all. I'm probably gonna answer this question like again in a few weeks, but who cares? That's life. Let's do it. It goes a little bit like this. I was just wondering if you have any advice on character development. I'm not trying to be mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but I would like to urge you to not take character development exercises too seriously. Like those big ones where like answer 100 questions for your character, particularly those. Or like the clickbait articles that are like 10 questions you must certainly ask about your characters if you want to be published. And I'm like, oh, this is garbage. Oh god, this is like mega garbage. Here's the dealio. I like those exercises, and I think that if you're getting started with writing, it is really good for you to do stuff like that, especially ones that are prompts. Questions aren't, I don't think they're that big of a deal for reasons that I will explain in a moment. But character prompts, or like character AUs, really good stuff because they get you to write, first off, and they get you to write in that character's point of view or about those characters. It gets you, it shortens the distance between you and the characters, and it gets you a little bit closer. It's good stuff. The issue that I have with those particular devices is that they create this sort of system where, especially if you're in the middle of writing a story about these characters and then you go and you do like exercises with them, is that you create expectations, and you create expectations of how these characters should be, and it is entirely likely that during the act of writing, these exercises will contradict what your character does later, or your character contradicts what the exercises did. Over the years, because you know, I used to do exercises like that, and I would find situations in which a part of me would be like, wait, no, this character can't say this in the story because it contradicts the questionnaire that we did like a month ago. And of course, little things like these do not only distract you from writing, but they stop you from writing. You're in the middle of writing, in the middle of doing a dramatic scene, and then you think to yourself, wait a minute, didn't this character say something else in the questionnaire? Let's stop writing and check the questionnaire. I can't find it, it's gotta be in my other notebook. Oh, you know what, I should go grab a snack, and then next thing you know, you have lost all momentum to write in the middle of a dramatic scene because you had to look up the facts. As I've said in the past, the characters are always right. So while I do think that character development exercises, of which you can find tons on Tumblr, I mean, I used to do character development prompts a long time ago, I think they're effective, and I think they get you to write, which is good. I think that you should also keep in mind that your characters will change and develop as the story progresses. Ultimately, I think the best way to discover who a character is, or how they're going to grow throughout the story, is simply to write the story. And that's about it for today's questions! If you have thoughts on if you have thoughts of your own regarding the questions that were answered today, please feel free to leave them down in the comments below, as well with any questions you would like me to answer in the near future. For the time being, thank you for watching, thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me, and I'll see you on the next one.